What if I told you that gossiping doesn't just hurt other people? It actually damages your own brain? Today, we're going to look at what science says about gossip, and why quitting it can literally make you mentally stronger. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling a little off? Maybe a bit tense or even slightly guilty, even though you were just chatting with a friend or coworker? That subtle, unsettling feeling has a name: stress. And surprisingly, one of its most common, everyday triggers is something we often dismiss as harmless: gossip. When you engage in gossip, especially the negative kind, your brain's ancient survival wiring kicks into gear. It activates the stress response system, the same one designed to handle immediate physical threats, like facing a predator. The amygdala, your brain's emotional alarm center, can't always tell the difference between a social threat and a physical one. It perceives the negativity, the judgment, and the potential for social fallout as a danger. In response, it signals your body to release a flood of stress hormones, most notably cortisol. Now, cortisol isn't inherently bad. It's crucial for waking you up in the morning and giving you a burst of energy in a crisis. The problem arises when it's chronically elevated. Scientific studies consistently show that engaging in negative social interactions, which is the very definition of most gossip, leads to a significant spike in cortisol levels. Think of it like revving a car engine into the red zone over and over for non-emergencies. Over time, this sustained state of high alert begins to wear down your system in tangible ways. One of the first casualties of chronic stress is your cognitive function. That constant bath of cortisol can interfere with the hippocampus, a brain region vital for learning and memory. You might find yourself becoming more forgetful, struggling to concentrate at work, or finding it difficult to retain new information. That brain fog you feel after a particularly draining gossip session isn't just in your head. It's a physiological response to the stress you've just experienced. Beyond memory, your emotional equilibrium takes a hit. The part of your brain responsible for emotional regulation, the prefrontal cortex, gets weakened by chronic cortisol exposure. This makes it harder to manage your feelings. You might find yourself snapping at a loved one over something small, feeling overwhelmed by minor setbacks, or experiencing mood swings that seem to come out of nowhere. Your emotional resilience is eroded, leaving you more vulnerable and reactive. This state of heightened alert naturally bleeds into a general sense of unease. Your baseline level of anxiety can increase, making you feel constantly on edge. Irritability becomes more common, as your nervous system is already primed for a fight-or-flight response. The world starts to feel more threatening, and your interactions with others become tinged with a defensiveness you might not even be aware of. So, while that moment of sharing a juicy secret might feel connecting or entertaining, your brain and body are processing it as a low-grade psychological threat. It's a fleeting hit of social bonding that comes with a hidden cost: attacks on your mental clarity, emotional stability, and overall sense of peace. The temporary thrill of being in the know is overshadowed by the lasting biological signature of stress. Have you ever noticed how some habits, for better or for worse, just seem to stick? It's because our brains are incredibly efficient learning machines. Think of your mind as a vast, intricate landscape with countless potential pathways. Every time you think a thought, feel an emotion, or perform an action, a specific neural pathway lights up. The more you travel down that same path, the wider and more well-trodden it becomes, making it the default route for your thoughts. Neuroscience has a simple phrase for this: neurons that fire together, wire together. It's the beautiful process that allows us to learn a new language or master an instrument. But this powerful mechanism is neutral. It doesn't distinguish between a good habit and a bad one. It just reinforces whatever we repeatedly do. So, what happens when the habit we're repeating is gossip? When we engage in gossip, we're not just idly chatting. We are actively training our brains in a very specific and ultimately detrimental set of mental exercises. With every piece of gossip, we are practicing judgment. We're rehearsing the act of looking at someone else's life, their choices, or their circumstances, and finding them lacking. This strengthens the neural circuits for criticism and cynicism. We're also training our brains to actively search for flaws. It becomes a subconscious filter. Instead of seeing a colleague's successful presentation, our gossip-trained mind might zero in on the one slide where they stumbled. We start scanning our social environment, not for connection or inspiration, but for imperfections and mistakes. And perhaps most powerfully, we get caught in the loop of replaying negative stories. We hear a negative account about someone. we repeat it to others, and we ruminate on it ourselves. This constant rehearsal carves a deep groove in our minds, making negativity feel familiar and even comfortable. This process is what neuroscientists call neural reinforcement. Over time, by repeatedly focusing on faults, judgments, and negative narratives, we literally rewire our brains. The pathways for negativity become superhighways, while the pathways for positivity and empathy become overgrown and difficult to access. Your brain becomes wired to notice, process, and recall negative information far more quickly and easily than positive information. The consequences of this rewiring seep into every corner of our lives. It fosters a default mode of pessimistic thinking, where we start to expect the worst from people and situations. It also leads to reduced empathy. When we constantly objectify people as characters in a story, it becomes harder to connect with their humanity and feel genuine compassion for their struggles. Ultimately, this can lead to a significant drop in our overall life satisfaction. When your brain is primed to see the bad, you'll find it everywhere, coloring your own experiences and relationships with a shade of discontent. In the simplest terms, a habit of gossip teaches your brain to see the worst in the world first. It builds a mental framework where negativity is the default setting, making it that much harder to appreciate the good that is also always present. 3 Gossip weakens emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence depends on empathy, self-control, and awareness. Research in psychology shows that frequent gossiping reduces empathy, increases impulsive speech, makes emotional regulation harder. Instead of understanding people, your brain gets used to reacting and judging, which harms relationships and trust. Have you ever walked away from a conversation, maybe a quick chat with a coworker or a friend, and felt a strange, lingering sense of unease? You can't quite put your finger on it, but something just feels off. You might have just been part of a gossip session, and that feeling is your conscience sending you a subtle but important signal. It's a common experience, that quiet pang of guilt or anxiety that follows sharing a juicy story about someone who isn't there. This happens because, deep down, our brains are wired for empathy and social harmony. Even when the gossip seems lighthearted or harmless, a part of you recognizes a disconnect. On one hand, you might have felt a temporary sense of connection, or even a little thrill from being in the know. But on the other hand, your brain's moral compass starts to spin. This internal tug-of-war is a form of cognitive dissonance, a conflict between your actions and your deeper values of kindness and respect. Your brain senses this moral conflict, and it doesn't just let it slide. Neuroscience gives us a fascinating window into this experience. When you engage in gossip, especially the negative kind, your brain activates specific areas like the anterior cingulate cortex and the insula. These aren't just random parts. They are deeply involved in processing social pain, empathy, and self-awareness. The anterior cingulate cortex, for instance, acts like an internal alarm bell, flagging when our behavior might lead to social exclusion or conflict. It's the part of you that worries, what if someone did this to me? This activation triggers a cascade of uncomfortable feelings. First, there's the guilt. It's the feeling that you've broken an unspoken social rule or potentially harmed someone's reputation. Then comes the fear of being judged. If you're talking about someone else behind their back, a part of your brain logically concludes that others might be doing the same to you. This can heighten your own social anxiety, making you feel more guarded and less secure in your relationships. You start to wonder who you can really trust. So, how can you navigate these situations and protect your peace of mind? One of the most powerful tools is redirection. When a conversation veers into gossip, you can gently steer it back to safer, more positive ground. If a friend starts talking about a mutual acquaintance's recent breakup, you could say something like, "That sounds really tough for them. I hope they're doing okay." Speaking of tough things, did you ever finish that challenging project you were working on? This acknowledges their comment without adding to the gossip and smoothly changes the subject. By choosing not to participate, you're not just avoiding a moment of discomfort. You're actively training your brain to align with your values. You're reinforcing pathways of empathy and integrity, which leads to a more stable sense of self-worth and deeper, more authentic connections with others. That feeling of unease after gossiping is your brain telling you that something is off. Listening to it is the first step toward building a more positive and less anxious social life. 5. What happens when you stop gossiping? The good news, your brain is flexible. When people consciously reduce gossip, stress levels decrease, Focus and clarity improve. Emotional stability increases, relationships become healthier. You're essentially retraining your brain toward calm, awareness, and self-control. Final thought: gossip doesn't make you informed, it doesn't make you powerful. And science shows it doesn't make your brain healthier. Protect your mind the same way you protect your body. Choose awareness over gossip. If this video helped you, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who values mental growth.